Welcome to Mental Health Helps, where we heal, educate, listen, prevent, and support through conversations with experts, activists, and people's personal stories. Our guest today is Ashleigh Di Lello, and she is the founder of Bio-Emotional Healing and also an incredible dancer. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So, I was a dancer for a long time, and thankfully had a love for it because it was a huge piece that helped save my life and brought me to my work of bio-emotional healing. So I grew up dancing. It's like a 25-year journey, so we'll condense it. And was the epitome of health. Started dancing 5 hours a day when I was 7 years old, and then literally overnight when I was 13, I had to fight for my life. And nobody could figure me out, and that was the hardest part of the whole journey. My family, I was tested for anything you can think of, every blood test, scan that existed, and they said I had a rare viral infection no one could diagnose or treat, and essentially I was sent home to die. Because they said there was nothing they could do. And I got so sick, there were days I literally was too afraid to go to sleep at night because I really feared if I surrendered conscious control, just my body wouldn't make it.
Thought you might not wake up.
Yeah, because I was at a point where I could hardly speak some days because it took too much energy, which of course, most of us don't realize how much.
Until you can't use a part of your body, you don't realize how much you rely on it. I know after COVID, just words coming to me, or when I broke my nose, like you don't know how many times you touch your nose.
It's true.
Until it's broken, and then you know. So
Yeah.
it's kind of all the things we take for granted, but once it's stripped from you, then you realize.
Yeah, absolutely. Health is your greatest gift. And so that was really the beginning of me really understanding the mind-body connection, because it really helped save my life and willed my body to live and keep fighting and keep going. Because I really got to a point where I told my mom, I don't know how I'm still here. I'd lost most of my hair. I was down to 90 pounds. My skin was yellow from my liver shutting down. My room even smelled like
your
death.
Body was dying.
Yeah, my body was dying. It was shutting down. And it was a long journey, a miraculous one that I was really teetering between life and death for about 4 years. So it took a lot of getting to just being able to walk from my bedroom to the bathroom, and then down like a few houses in the neighborhood, and then around the block. And I was out of dance for 6 years. So I started to get my life back, but it was a journey to be able to endure the physical demands of dancing.
So how did you survive?
Yeah, so long story short, until we found any answers, literally my will to live was what kept me there. And then my family turned to alternative functional medicine, which at that time was very voodoo. We're talking 25 years ago. It was like everyone had an idea of burning incense and like dreadlocks, and not at all streamlined, or you didn't have functional medicine doctors like you do today. But we were doing anything. We were desperate. The medical world had essentially said there was nothing they could do.
Right. And when you're desperate, you'll search for anything. I know. I mean, we had a holistic doctor several years ago, and we would just joke around and say, should we call the witch doctor?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense in modern medicine, but when you're desperate, you'll do and try anything because what is supposed to work doesn't work.
Yeah, and yet, like when you really study it, our bodies were designed to heal. And we can see that if you cut your finger, that innate intelligence starts repairing itself. But we have interferences that come in. And so when we can remove that, then the body can do what it was designed to do, which is to heal and repair. And so that's essentially what we're talking about with holistic medicine. So homeopathic medicine, my nutrition, supplementation, it saved my life. And it was slow. It was very slow, and it was very gradual. But after 4.5 years, I started to reclaim my life back. I wasn't living in that type of danger. And then 6 years to have enough strength and energy to be able to go back to the dance studio.
Okay, and when she says dance studio, I want you, like my mom is a huge, so you think you can dance, and you might recognize her because you've had a pretty great career. I mean,
I did.
Coming back from what the doctor said was basically certain death to where you are right now seems miraculous.
Yeah, and that's the other part of the story is I got knocked off that mountain again. And it was miraculous for me to go back to dance. And what's extra miraculous, and I want to share about that as we get into bioemotional healing and the study of the brain, because I was harnessing my brain's power in a way during my whole illness that I had no idea I was doing, right? But that's what also allowed me to go back to dance in the way that I did, because I was out from age 14 to 20. And if you're going to be a professional in anything,
that's pretty critical time.
Those are like the most crucial years. So it really was remarkable when I came back to dancing, because I seemed to just make up for that time. And I worked really hard, but I just really thought, okay, God's blessing me. But it's really interesting because during my illness, I was in so many tests and scans because we were constantly trying to figure out what was wrong with me.
Right.
And so I just decided during that time, I'm going to use this time to dance in my mind. And so that's what I would do. And I would see myself in class, and I would go through technique. I would go through routines I knew and see myself on stage. And I remember just sometimes crying in the MRI machine because it felt so real. And it wasn't from a place of loss. And that was devastating, to not just lose my whole life, but lose the thing I loved most. But I would be crying from a place of joy and gratitude over doing the thing that I loved most again. And what I didn't understand then, because I was 13 years old, and there was no exposure to neuroscience like we have today. You'd have had to go and check out an academic journal, right, or a study.
Go to the library and fill out a card.
That's right. But for those 6 years, I was harnessing my brain's neuroplasticity to create those neural pathways as if I had been dancing, because our nervous system and our subconscious mind don't know the difference between something that has actually happened and something that you are vividly imagining and creating. And I did that for 6 years.
And I love that. And I want to tell you guys that this is why we are talking about it. This has a lot to do, there's a reason behind all these stories, is because people with chronic pain, people with anxiety, depression, suicide, ideology, Ashleigh's going to share with you incredible information that you can do to shift and to help yourself. And I love this. I teach self-defense and mental awareness, and it's kind of the same thing, because in light of a real experience, you have to create an artificial experience so your body and brain knows what to do when you're under pressure.
Certain situation, yeah.
And also my mom suffers from chronic pain, and that's one of the big reasons that people choose to end their life, is they can't handle the pain. So stick around, because we're going to talk about what they can do. And that's one of the things you've learned, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And chronic pain, my own, was what made me dive into studying the brain, because all pain comes from the brain. It's felt in the body. It is real. So I don't want to that, because I know so many chronic pain people, because they can't find the source, they say it's in your mind. That's not what I mean. It's not created in your mind like you're making it up, but it is created in the brain, and the brain sends those pain signals to the body. And so here we are, chronic pain is still the most misunderstood medical diagnosis, more than cancer, like chronic pain, and it is the most prevalent worldwide because they don't understand it. And yet I went everywhere and saw so many specialists, and nobody talked to me about my brain. And I got to a place of desperation, because they said, and this is another part of the story we'll get into, that my nervous system had flipped a switch into pain. So I thought, I got to figure out how to flip it back. And in understanding that all pain comes from the brain, I'm like, why aren't we even talking about this? Because that means we can do something about it. And I got to such a place of desperation and determination, and that's what took me to the creation of bioemotional healing.
Well, and I love what I read on your website, where it basically says if you can get the brain to fire, it will rewire. And that is so important. I mean, even people dealing with COVID symptoms like me, I've lost my taste and smell for over a year. And I keep going, like, I know it's there. I just have to find it. It literally just has to connect again, because I didn't lose my taste buds. I lost the ability to register the taste.
Right.
And having all these phantom smells and things. So I know the brain is powerful. We just have to figure out how to harness that power to create the result we need.
Right.
So how are you doing that, or how are you teaching that?
Yeah. So just how we got here, I got back and had an amazing professional career. Yes. When it was really, really miraculous. To just go from how sick I was to now being able to dance 10, 12 hours a day. And then had my daughter, which they also said I'd never have. And so I did feel like I was on top of the mountain. And then about 5.5, coming up on 6 years ago, I had a second hip surgery. The first one was successful, went back to my career. This one went entirely different. As I tried to get off crutches, I knew something was really wrong, and it's failed. And piece by piece, my whole body just started to have horrifying pain. So I went from like being an elite professional dancer, athlete, to now struggling to walk, struggling to hold a book. I had a 2-year-old daughter that I could now not even lift up, take care of in the way that I wanted to. I was struggling to do everyday tasks. And it was just very deja vu, except for now I was a mother too. I was an adult. I had businesses.
Yeah.
I lost my professional careers now. And deja vu in terms that I was going again to expert. We don't know. We can't figure it out. Your surgery just failed. Your nervous system flipped a switch into pain. This is your life now, throwing me fibromyalgia pamphlets, chronic regional pain syndrome. I had a leading expert actually tell me, like, it's only downhill from here. Like, literally uttered those words, which is just mind-boggling. And I was so mad because I had been through what I'd been through, so I had learned to not accept those limitations. But how many people have been told a similar story?
I've had doctors tell me that it's going to hurt so bad you'll wish you were dead, but you're not going to die. It's just going to hurt that bad. And you think, well, then what's the point of living if it's going to be this bad?
Right.
And then you tell yourself that. Like, you believe what you tell yourself oftentimes.
Well, and you're raised to believe experts, right? And if they're telling you, like, there's nothing we can do, it's downhill from here, you're not getting any younger. I mean, I'm like 34 years old and going, I'm not getting any younger, this is my life, it's gonna get worse.
That's weird.
I know. Well, I was like, you know what, my 6-year-old's not getting any younger. At that point, I was like, I don't accept this. And that was like, okay, well, if my nervous system flipped a switch, I'm gonna figure out how to flip it back. And that's what I realized, and as I dove into neuroscience and pain science and understanding the brain and how it creates pain, creates those pain pathways. And the beautiful thing, it's not beautiful, but no matter what's holding you stuck, whether it is mental or emotional or physical, it's the same wiring that happens from the brain through the nervous system to the body. Neural pathways, pain pathways. The more they fire, and since we're talking about pain, but it's the same regardless. But in just being specific to pain, the more it fires, the more it gets hardwired. The more that therefore does become the default setting. That's why it continues. And then those pain receptors get hypersensitive, which is why it gets worse. And they get less specific into which area they're supposed to send pain, and that's why it spreads. And that's why with chronic pain, it's always like, well, it started here, now it's here, and when you're living in that type of stress, you get other health issues because your body, you're not sleeping, you're in constant stress, and so it is going to get worse. But nobody's talking about, like, it's all about managing the pain and not talking about this unbelievable power that we have in our brain and nervous system. And that the beautiful thing in neuroscience is really in the last 10 years, we've been able to map the brain and see this from functional MRIs and not have to just, once people die, open up their brain and trying to figure these connections out, is that unless you have real, true, like, mental illness or injury, and obviously as you get older, if you have Alzheimer's, dementia, things are changing. But unless you have
there's even treatments for that.
There's even that. Absolutely.
NAD infusions and different things that you can do that are regenerating.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome.
But like everybody, until the day we die, our brain remains plastic. It can change, it can learn, which means we can change. And we can relearn new patterns. And we don't have to just like manage our mental, emotional, physical symptoms the rest of our life. Like we can harness that power. And that's what I realized was missing. Because I did everything. So then I started to address everything with the brain, right?
Yeah.
And do anything you can think of with brain remapping and EMDR and pain retraining. But what I realized is nobody had a process. Like, because the solution couldn't be from the outside in. Because you're the only one who lives inside your body and in your mind and in your life and in those triggers and in those symptoms.
And it's interesting because we only know what we know. I mean, I often think about that. Does my body feel normal? But what is normal? Normal is relative to you and your personal experience. Nobody knows 100% what anyone else feels, thinks, or experiences when it comes to pain or sensation or thought. You know what I mean? It's just...
Well, and pain is so subjective. And this is how we know the biggest shift is understanding pain. And again, this is anxiety too. This is any stress response, response. It feels like punishment because nobody wants it. It's horrible to live in, but it's protection. The brain is sending signals to protect you from other threats, but what happens is the brain gets misguided and it gets overprotective, and it feels like that stress response is how it's communicating to you to keep you safe.
When I was in the Army, the drill sergeants used to just say, pain is weakness leaving the body.
Yeah.
You know, you're not in pain. Pain is weakness leaving the body, and you're just being weak. I think it's kind of funny in that, but at the same time, we do register pain often as a weakness when, in fact, we can go in there and start to flip the switch. Yeah. It's just, again, new ways of thinking and rewiring. So can we talk about what it is you're doing, like how to recognize that, and what are steps that people watching or listening can do, like right away to start to work on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the process I take my clients through is a 9-week, obviously in depth, and the order is just as crucial as the steps. Okay. Because what's really important when we're talking about rewiring, because that's become a buzzword per se, but you're dealing with a highly intelligent system. Your brain is the only self-regulating organ. So it doesn't need anyone's consent to do what it wants to do. And we can all attest to that in our life, right? You can be trying and your brain's like, thanks, I'm gonna keep doing this.
Yeah, nice try.
Nice try.
I got this.
I got this. And it really is hardwired thinking that's best for you. And so you have to work with it, not fight against it, right? There's a lot of just like shut down your brain, fight it, ignore it. It's not going to work because your brain, again, is going to do what it feels it needs to do for you. And
well, you said 95 to 98% of what we do is subconsciously done by our brain.
By the time we're 35 years old, it's, which is crazy because that's like right where I was when I was starting to study this. And I'm like, well, great. So 95% is being controlled.
Better luck next time, Ashleigh.
But that's the beautiful thing is, and that's what my work is rooted in, is getting to that subconscious. Because of that, because the brain wants to default to whatever's familiar, that's safe. So that's crazy to think of, but if you've had anxiety a long time, that's safe not to your brain because it's familiar. Not having anxiety is uncomfortable because it's like, well, what is this?
What do I do with this?
This is an unknown experience. I don't feel safe in this. Pain is the same way. So just first understanding that is so key to be able to work with your system versus feel like it's punishing you and you've got to work against it.
And what I think is super interesting and important here is our brain is our central processor for every single thing we do mentally, physically, emotionally. So being able to harness that and understand that you can rewire, retrain, switch from the things that you're used to, you can teach your brain how to do new tricks, and that will impact every single thing, whether you're struggling with any of these issues. It's like so broad reaching.
And that's the beautiful thing is this journey started with pain, but I've worked with clients with anything. Depression, anxiety. I just had a client in 9 weeks. She used to have horrifying anxiety, and at a trigger, she would spiral into a depression and would have suicidal thoughts. And I just spoke to her a few days ago, and she went through the 9-week process, and she's like, I had a huge trigger the other day. Honestly, 2 minutes, I was done. Where we're talking before days, weeks, and not trying to commit suicide. And that the truth is we've all been sold the idea, and how often have we heard this, right? Change is hard, change is hard, change is hard. And you know what it is? Because we're trying to change while fighting our hardwired system. But when you can work with it and utilize that power not to keep you stuck, but to actually set you free, then I have seen zero limitations on not just myself, right? I'm a living witness twice.
Right.
Because also too, along with my pain, I realized I had subconscious, like I'd been carrying PTSD subconsciously since I was 13. You can't fight for your life for 4 years, be afraid to sleep, and not have that create a great deal of fear and unsafety in your own body, right? And so I had to heal all of that too, while feeling all the physical symptoms that triggered that PTSD, right? So it's possible, right? Because we think, well, I gotta get life to a certain place to be able to change. And it's like, no, you gotta change those neural pathways while living your life, while having the triggers that create that. And so when you can work with it, change absolutely is possible. We were created so much more powerfully, and we've all contributed to like talent or intellect or gifts, and it's like separate from all of that, we have this unbelievable wiring that is just science. Like it's not just gifts or blessings, it is literally science and how the brain and body work. And I love that because I feel like no matter who you are, spiritually, intellectually, like you can get around that. And that's why everything I walk my clients through, I also tell them why, right? Because then it not just gives them a reason to do it, but you again start understanding how powerful you are. So to get started, what can you do, right?
What can we do?
Let's talk about that, right? Aside from obviously, doing the deep work
dive
that I do, first, let's talk about just even understanding this, right? So I have, and you can go to my website, ashleighdilello.com. I have a free mind-body blueprint because I know this is like a lot. I mean, for a better word, it's very heady when you're talking about like neuroscience. Yeah. So where do you start? Because most people are already in a place of overwhelm, and this can add to that overwhelm, right? So that's why this free mind-body blueprint is a 3-step process of where to start. So I'm going to give like an overview of that, but I want you to know you can go and print that out and have this as a reference point.
And don't be afraid. Don't be overwhelmed because it really there's a lot of details. You don't need to know the details. You need to understand the principle. You learn through principle-based experiences. So, and she can break that down. Even just in me researching you and learning more about you, I feel like I have a better understanding.
That's great. Good. That's what I want people to know is as complex as the brain is actually very, very simple. Yeah. And going back to that as we go into this 3-step process, that idea of safety, that's really all the brain cares about, is your safety and survival. And what's really important is that even neuroscience has shown the brain perceives emotional threats similarly to physical threats. So everyone goes, of course my brain wants me to physically survive, but you have to know it cares just as much about your emotional well-being. And if it feels either needs protecting, it creates a stressful response. And that's why we're seeing such a prevalence of not just chronic pain, but mental and emotional health issues, right? At an unprecedented rate because of just the area we're living in and the stress and it's just been amplified.
All the stimulus.
So you got to understand though that because we all feel like a prisoner, right? Whether to our mind or our body, your brain is protecting you. So that means, okay, it doesn't hate me. I've got to work with it. So that, first, that's just a really crucial shift to understand. Because if you hate your brain or your system, even that thought of fighting triggers your brain's alarm signals. The alarm bells start going off, which triggers fight or flight, right? Which will just amplify your already stress response. So just that reframing is so important.
Okay, your brain is trying to protect you. It loves you. Love it back. Work together. Stop fighting.
It's just, it's gotten things really I tell my kids. Misguided based upon your life experiences. And that's why that protective response is very individual. And someone, it might be pain, and another person, it might be anxiety. Right? Or a combination, because inevitably the physical body and emotional body both become involved. Right? Because no system works alone. And that's why, to what you said, physical pain turns into deep depression. Because you cannot go through physical and not feel emotional. And then emotional eventually starts amplifying physical. And people can see that. An anxiety attack is a physical reaction. Right? So we know they're connected. So just that shift first. And then the Mind-Body Blueprint is a 3-step process. And it's easy to remember because it's the acronym ACT, A-C-T. Okay, so the first is awareness, which of course is another word we're talking about, but what does it mean? Okay, so first, this awareness about your brain and what's happening, very important, right? Because then you can start to see and understand what's happening versus just being reactive to it. Because that's how most of us work. We have a stimulus, we react, and it's done in a nanosecond.
Yeah.
Right? So awareness is about starting to just kind of separate from reacting to what we feel. Right?
So be aware, acknowledge what you're what you're feeling, what you're seeing. You're aware of your body, of your mind, of what's going on.
And I always tell like my clients, you're the observer.
Okay.
The reason why that's important is because when we start to pay attention, we start to criticize and judge. That's our first. Like, I can't believe I'm having these thoughts. I can't believe I'm having this pain again.
I'm so weak.
I'm so weak. Why can't I heal? What's wrong with me? Right?
Yeah.
Again, that criticism and judgment activates the brain's alarm signals. So that in of itself, again, is perpetuating the fight or flight, the stress response.
So stop that.
So what is an observer? They're neutral.
Okay.
So as we're starting to pay attention to what's happening in our system, we aren't making judgments. We're just listening, paying attention, asking questions like, what just happened that might be similar to something in the past that's creating this response in my body? Like, why did my pain just amplify? Like, what just happened? Because emotional stress can cause your physical pain to amplify, right? So that's why that awareness, you are the observer. You're not there to criticize and judge. You're there just to start really understanding what's happening.
So that's the
first.
A.
That's the
A,
first.
be aware.
Yeah.
Observe.
C next is to connect to your body, right? Because whether you're having an emotional stress or physical, we want to get out of our body, right? And everybody feels that way. Or how do we shut it down as fast as possible? Now, that response, that stress response, like I said before, it's happening. And when we try to fight it or escape from it, alarm bells, fight or flight. And it's trying to teach us. Again, everything, our bodies do things for a reason. Our mind's doing things for a reason. It's actually trying to teach us. And we're been taught just to shut it down and be angry about it.
Right.
And believe me, I get that.
Yeah. Why are you telling me now?
I get that to like the depths of my soul, because my body has been my greatest challenge throughout my life. But you have to understand the body informs the brain and the brain informs the body. So we know that sometimes you can't just take conscious control of the mind if the body's in a really heightened state.
Yeah.
Because the body is telling the brain, oh my gosh, we have to panic.
And a lot of people, like at this point in my mind, I'm thinking about my poor mom who suffers from chronic constant pain, fibromyalgia, degenerative bone disease. She's had, 15 surgeries. And I know she gets really frustrated because I love my sister too, but she's like, just think positive thoughts, Mom. Yeah. Just think that you're healthy. Just think that you feel good. And my mom is like,
yeah, you want to punch.
Do you not think that I'm doing that? Like,
punch someone in the face.
So it's kind of hard because I feel like a lot of people who struggle with severe depression or with chronic pain go, yeah, this sounds really great in theory, and I'm trying to get my brain to just like magically heal my body, but like, where's the reality in how much can we work through and change? Like, I mean, if your body is fighting, degenerative bone disease or fibromyalgia or cancer or whatever, how much control can we implement through this process over pain, right? Like, I mean, of course it's going to help, but I know also for some people it feels a little bit like almost antagonistic because they go, well, I want to be healthy and I think I'm healthy, but I'm not. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I get this to the depths of that very few people do, right?
Yeah,
I have fought for my life and I have lived in horrifying pain, and I had nerve pain. So I have lived where I can take the strongest opioids that exist and it does nothing.
Yeah, same.
Nothing.
Not for me,
right?
but,
nothing. Like water. And that's a scary place to be because there was no escape.
Nothing touches your pain.
Nothing.
It's just something you either have to live with or choose not to live
every
with.
moment of every day. And obviously, I had months, maybe slept 2-3 hours a night, right? Like, I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. So by no means is this superficial, and I totally get that when it's like, oh, think positive, and you really want to punch someone in the face because it's like, I just give one day in this body and see how you do.
Yeah. Well, it's that whole, pain is in your head. We can't diagnose anything. And it's like, it's not. The people who are suffering know it's not. Just the same as, maybe it's not a cure-all, fix-all, but it can help a lot.
Oh,
right?
Significant. I mean, I refuse to put limits, right? Because I'm not God. But I have seen within my own self and with my clients, no limitations. Now, obviously, that takes your work and your effort, and it is individual. And again, I'm not God, and I'm not in your body. But so this connecting to your body, here's what happens with any stress response. Your greatest fear is the pain in of itself and the continuation of it. People who have anxiety, their greatest anxiety becomes over the anxiety itself. Yeah. Right?
Anxiety over anxiety.
Anxiety over anxiety. So the first step in changing your stress response is changing your reaction to the stress response. So I'm not talking about thinking positively. I'm talking about when you feel, and this is this awareness and connecting to the body, what is happening. Because when I felt pain, as anyone is, you get tight, tense, fight it, because it's horrible. You're not like, oh,
No, it feels like my body's on fire right now.
Absolutely, yeah. I used to, with my husband, play the Alicia Keys song, like, this girl is on fire, because
that's what it feels like.
Just to try to bring some humor into a non-humorous situation, right?
Laugh or cry, that's one of them.
But how the brain works. And this is what I'm talking about. I always come back to how the brain works. So this isn't just some superficial think positive. This is literally how the brain works.
Yes.
Once you've had something for long enough, your brain has a threat around that thing in and of itself. And we perpetuate it by how we react to it. So what are the thoughts? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I still have this. I'm so weak. I can't believe I'm not healing. Is this going to ever go away? I don't know if I can keep doing this. And those are all real. And we all have those thoughts, but you have to know every time you react to your stress like that, the brain's alarm signals go higher. And that threat response,
you're giving it power,
gets more and more hardwired every time. So it's not just the thing that it began with, the chronic pain, the chronic anxiety, depression. It's then every time you feel that, what you respond to it hardwires it all the more. Yeah. So the first step, and I'm not saying it's easy, but here's where it is. And I came to a place. It's not easy. But you know what's harder? Fighting every day. Fighting what you don't want. And it takes a whole lot of effort. And so I thought, well, that's not easy. I'd rather put my efforts into moving me forward. And to knowing that every time I'm doing this, those neural pathways are changing. So when I felt pain, you better believe, and in a nanosecond, that's going to run, oh my gosh, I can't believe, is it ever going to go away? I had to start saying, instead of fighting it and getting tense, I had to connect to my body and start literally being aware of what I was communicating. Okay. And how I was reacting to it. And I've had clients with fibromyalgia that just even by understanding this could take a flare down to a 2. Not with medicine, with literally calming that response in the body, listening, and being like, you know what? And here's the thing, it's very individual to the person, and obviously I dive deep with that. But if we go back to how simple the brain is, it's about safety. If you can think of nothing else to say, you literally can go to, it's okay, we're safe. I'm physically safe, I'm emotionally safe, we can handle this. I know that seems so simple, but again, that's all the brain cares about. Right. So the symptom in of itself doesn't feel safe, but then your response amplifies that. And we can see that. Someone can be totally safe in their own room, and just by thinking thoughts, have an anxiety attack, a panic attack, because it's real and it was created by thought. So when we feel physical pain, emotional pain, and by thought we amplify the threat response, it's going to amplify it. So we're going to be aware, we're going to observe, then we're going to connect to our body. Yes, and you do that by breath is a great way to do that as well. Okay, what should we do? Yeah, so 2 ways. Obviously we know that breathing calmly, and people talk a lot about, you've got your vagus nerve and you also have your phrenic nerve, and that's why when we're heightened, and we breathe, it amplifies in the body because now both are communicating, oh my gosh, we're stressed, right?
Yeah.
So obviously the goal is to breathe calmly, but you can't always do that. Okay. So if you ever had told someone who's in like horrifying pain or an anxiety attack, like, just be calm, you know, it's like, again, you want to.
And then that response goes,
yeah. Like, really? Like, my body is literally like this.
Yeah.
And you're like, and then that makes you even more stressed because you can't get there. So the goal is to breathe calmly. And maybe you can get there, but in the case that you can't, there is neuroscience is just, this is the newest idea we've come across, the fastest way to calm down the body. Because sometimes you have to go to your physiology first. Sometimes if you just try to calm down your brain when it's running, no. So, but if you can calm your body down, that opens you up to being able to now take better control of your mind. So it's called a physiological sigh. And actually animals do it. And if you have a dog, you'll notice they do it a lot anytime before they're about to like fall asleep.
Okay.
Now you'll see it. I see it in my dog all the time. So it's a double inhale followed by an exhale. Okay. And what it does is, if you think about after you do a hard cry or even a hard laugh, we sigh, right? Like we just, like we have a sigh. And what that does is it offloads carbon dioxide from our lungs, which again brings the stress response down. So physiological sigh, you can do 2 inhales, followed by an exhale. And it's through the nose and out of the mouth. So it's like a longer first inhale and then bring it back in more and exhale out. And what's beautiful about this is they've shown just 2 to 3 of those, even repeated 2 to 3 times, but you can utilize your adrenaline to use that. And that's why people want to go for a run. But you can't always go for a run. If you're a chronic pain patient, you can't run. Right. So it has to be creative, but you can utilize that adrenaline to calm down your system and your body, which then helps you go to the next step, which is to take control. Take control of your mind and take control of your actions.
And you had also mentioned just even a 4-second breath in and a 4-second breath out. If you just can kind of get timing to that, it a little.
Ultimately, if you can get to, that's where you want to get, is to be able to get to that inhale, exhale, and it could, as long as they're like equal, right? And you really want to always inhale through your nose.
And I tell myself this a lot. I control my body doesn't control me. And usually when I'm dieting, I'm like, I'm in control, right? Not you. Right. So, you know, like when you want the stuff, I just have to tell myself that. And a lot of the breathing, I mean, I do find my job's very stressful. My life is stressful. And I sit at my desk kind of a lot of times and it's like, and I'm doing that. And then I think, I wonder if they hear me in the next room. I'm over here like loud breathing.
That's good. Most of us don't breathe. It happens automatically, but most of us don't consciously breathe, and we breathe really shallow up here because when we're in stress, you can't take a deep breath. And honestly, I don't think I took a deep breath, even as a professional dancer, for like 20 years because my subconscious system was running in fight or flight. And so most of us actually don't breathe. And I mean, we could breathing is so crucial in so many different ways. And so breath practice is so important because most of us really actually aren't getting that deep diaphragmatic breathing like on a consistent basis.
So if you're watching right now or listening, let's challenge them. Let's take a big deep breath. Yes. Do you guys want to do it with us?
Yeah.
Let's do the 2 inhales and the exhale, okay?
Are we doing the physiological sigh?
Let's do the sigh.
It's very attractive.
It is attractive.
Inhale and then a shorter one and exhale, right? So it goes.
See, that just feels pretty good.
It does. And the goal is as much as possible to
expand your diaphragm
instead of up here, right? And that just takes some practice because most of us haven't practiced unless you're a singer, right? Or you've done a lot of yoga, like breathing from our diaphragm. Yeah. Even dancers don't because we're taught to hold our abdomen so tight that we're not really letting it go because that requires expansion.
As a broadcaster, to help with our voice and our breathing, because it can be scary when you start talking, you kind of stop. My instructor would say, hold on and try to lift the table while you're doing it. Like take a big breath and just, you know, you're trying to really lift and it causes you to kind of expand. So there's different things, but you should practice. And even if you're laying in bed at night, you know, doing timing your breath
Absolutely.
in and out. Those are little things that you can start to do that really do make a difference.
There's so many different modalities,
Yeah.
you know, so find ones that you resonate with. But obviously the physiological sigh is awesome. It's fast. It's always accessible. And then try to get to just some calm breaths, equal inhale, exhale, right? So, and when you automatically through the vagus and phrenic nerve, it's already, you can feel that. Like I feel calmer, right? Because that's, again, how our system works. So then T can take control, right? And with what you said, you absolutely are in control of your mind and body. But the key shift that changed my life and my clients is that I used to think it me versus my brain, me versus my body. And
work together.
We are a team. Like we are the greatest of allies now, right?
Yes.
And so it's like we have conversations where I'm like, remember, I'm in charge, but like I trust you to get in alignment with me, right? Work with me. So that taking control of your thoughts and actions is, once you've connected with the body and kind of asked questions like, is this more a physical threat? Is this more an emotional threat? Because again, it's triggering a response because it feels either emotionally unsafe or physically unsafe or both, right? So if you just understand that, then you have a better direction of what to take control of your thoughts. And again, that's where I say it's very specific, but it can also just be, I'm physically safe. Like, I'm okay. I'm safe in this body. I'm emotionally safe right now. Like, I'm okay. I can handle this. We can get through this moment. And obviously it can be a lot more specific, but it can also be general to that because, again, that's all the brain cares about, right? So the more you ask questions and connect and understand, the more you can change and take control of what you want to think. And you can ask yourself that question, is what I'm thinking right now moving me towards the outcome I want? And usually it's no, right? If you just ask that question, it's like, oh, actually, no. Do I want to be in pain the rest of my life? No. So why am I thinking that? Right? Do I want to be a prisoner to anxiety always, right? So then what do I want to think? And that's in a moment where I can renegotiate. Let's talk about that. Let's think about that. And then what are some actions I can take right now in this moment, right?
Okay.
Rather than tensing. If it's pain, like how do I lay down and maybe allow my body to move through it instead of fight it and anchor it in? Do I need to go on a walk or take a bath or call a friend? Is it a stressful moment with work? Like, am I in such overwhelm? Okay, what's one task I can do and only do that task until it's done, right? So we're just bringing our system into a place that instead of being in the stress where everything is urgent and everything's overwhelmed and that just gets bigger and bigger, let's connect. Let's come back into our bodies. Let's come back into our minds and let's take control of what we're thinking and then what we're doing to start leading us to where we want to go instead of reinforcing what we don't want, which is what we do in those situations when we're feeling that stress.
When my daughter attempted suicide and went through all of this, before she left the treatment facility, they made her write a list of things that help her when she's feeling like that. As you mentioned, take a bath, go on a walk, listen to good music, call a friend. I think it's important as individuals that when we know sometimes our brain just reacts or our body just reacts, to have a list maybe on your phone or somewhere that okay, here are some things right now that I can do. I can tell that I'm having, I'm aware. I see that I'm having a reaction to something or a trigger. Here's some things that I can do that I know put me in a safe space.
Yeah. And then the more when you understand like why that happened or what happened, then the more you can start reframing belief systems around it, right? Because beyond our thoughts are our belief systems, and those belief systems are driving our thoughts. Beliefs, we all have thousands of beliefs, but beliefs about our worth, about our potential, about everything. And so as we connect to our body and ask questions and have greater awareness about ourselves, then that gives us room, to do, what I do with my clients and dive deeper and start reframing those. Because we're just not taught to just be our own best friend, and also, what if I just need to cry? Like, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because we've also been taught to shut that down. And I shut down, lots of emotions because I was fighting to survive, and it served me through a time, but I had to deal with that. So sometimes the greatest thing you can do in that moment is actually allow yourself to feel.
Just grieve.
Right? Scream, yell, cry, sob, and not judge it again, but literally give ourselves permission, because then it can let it go. Right? So it's not only something proactive, but it's like honoring, what do I need?
What is your body asking of you and needing most?
Because we're human beings, and we can't go through hard things in life and not be impacted by them. I don't care how tough you are, positive, strong, like we're not robots. And so a lot of what also keeps us in our stress response is we judge and don't give ourselves permission, right, to feel the things that have impacted us. And so sometimes that action could also be that, right?
Yeah, not grieving properly. That was a big one. I do Nobody Dies Alone at the hospital. And all these people, especially during the pandemic, who weren't allowed to go to a funeral or weren't allowed to see their loved one in the hospital. This creates so much confusion in your mind and your heart, because you don't get to see that and experience that emotion and get through it. And so it's proven that people need to grieve.
Absolutely. Grieve, and grieve. Sometimes what we don't even talk about is we have to grieve the things that never were, that we hoped for, right?
Yeah.
I had
marriages, children, careers,
life, like the things that we've lost, right? That's still a loss. And emotions, again, can be our greatest teachers, because they also teach us about ourselves, our strength, our resilience. They teach us about what matters. They teach us about our heart, and we also haven't been taught that. We've been taught to shut down emotions. And again, to that point of like, just be positive, right? And it's like, well, we all know that we want to live in a state that's more empowering and positive, but we're not one thing with the exception of the other. Like we still actually, when we allow ourselves space to feel, we create more room to actually be those things in an authentic way, where we're not fighting our system, right? So it could also just be that. And that's one thing most people have never given themselves permission or not to judge. And I did that when I was sick and fighting for my life. If I wanted to cry, here I was a teenager. My teenage years were spent in hospitals fighting for my life. I lost dance. I lost going to school. I had to grow up really fast. So I didn't have a normal teenage growing up. I couldn't. I had to mature fast. And that's a loss too, right? Because I went back and I just didn't resonate with people my age, because I just had been living in a different place.
What was important to them was not important to you at all, because they were worried about, their sneakers or their dress, and you're worried about breathing.
Right, living, surviving, which again, I tried to be like, well, we only know what we know.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to cry, I wouldn't allow myself. Yeah. Because I was like, I gotta be a fighter, I gotta survive. And again, there were certain days I only had energy for one or the other, right? But 20 years later, I had to deal with a lot of sadness and fear and anger too. I'm not an angry person by any means, but you can't go through things, and not angry at God or anything, but just like,
why me?
Just the challenges of life, right? But also anger helped me also push through. Like, I will not accept that. Like, I will fight this,
Do you know who I am? I am Ashleigh. You will not win.
I'm like, do you know what our wiring? And that's really my mission. I used to speak a lot after my illness and on So You Think You Can Dance. I was a motivational speaker, right? Because I did have an amazing story of triumph, and I defeated the odds. But when I went through what I went through with pain and figuring out and creating bioemotional healing, it wasn't just for me, because I knew if I was as tough as I was with what I had gone through, like, what were other people going through that were also given no hope? And I knew that I wanted to not just be a story of inspiration. I wanted,
you're gonna make me cry.
Well, you're gonna make me cry, because I wanted people to know that they have the same capacity to be the victor in their life, and then I wanted to show them how.
Right.
And that is what bioemotional healing is.
I've thought of that often as we've been through some of the super hard things that we've been through, is if there is no purpose in your pain, then it's just pain.
Right.
And what's the point of pain unless you just love to suffer?
Right.
So throughout your tough experiences and our tough experiences and yours at home, if you can find some purpose in that, I think that gives us power and it gives us healing. And you think, I'm glad I went through that because I understand it to a point that I can share and help. And that feeds our souls.
Absolutely. That purpose in figuring this out was what got me up, or as pain woke me up in the middle of the night, I went to work, and it's hope, because I know so many people feel hopeless, and we have been told both in the mental health and physical health world, the medical world, of just like, this is it, this is your life, you got to accept it, we'll manage it. And there's such a feeling of powerlessness.
So your message is you don't have to manage.
That's right. You can get beyond. And I have seen it with anxiety. I've seen it with depression. I've worked with licensed psychologists. 67 years old, couldn't get free of some of their own stress responses. Get free. One of the best days of my life was when my 67-year-old client was like, doors are wide open, right?
Yeah.
Because we also have, it's too late, I've been stuck too long. Every day matters, right? I've lived 26 years longer than promised. Every day matters. And I think if anything, COVID has hopefully taught us that, like, make your life count. And it's never too late. You've never been stuck too long. I actually have now, I have a client where I have she had Lyme disease, which really attacks the brain. There's a lot of neurological issues. She had it very severe, and couldn't stop throwing up. And so therefore, obviously, your body is barely hanging on it. She had a hard time getting nutrition. She went back east to a Lyme treatment center. It's one of the biggest in the country. Did the whole protocol. And of course, they do brain scans and images. She was supposed to go back. She found bioemotional healing and thought, I need to do this first, because she also had a lot of trauma in her life. And again, it's all connected, right? I had other issues that had happened in my life on an emotional level that also were impacting what my nervous system was doing, right? It's all connected. And so she did bioemotional healing. And the beautiful thing about it is that she does it. So it's not dependent upon me. Once they learn and they go through the process, they have it the rest of their life, right? And they now stand in that power. And so she went back to the treatment facility, because of course I'm an advocate. You got to treat your physical body. But in order to fully heal, you have to treat the brain. And that's what we're missing. And it's the command center. So she went back and did these tests and scans, and her brain had improved by 40%.
Wow.
In function.
That's incredible.
And it wasn't a treatment, it was her harnessing that power that we all have. It's just no one has taught us how to do it. And I knew it worked. I've seen it. Obviously, I've lived it. I see it every day, but I have clear evidence now. Like, can your brain change? And even while also combating Lyme, like combating a real stressor. So can people change while also combating anxiety and depression? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, you are not the exception.
I love that. I hope that when what you're hearing gives you hope, and for you or somebody that you know or love, because it doesn't matter what the experts have said. It doesn't matter what those have said. It matters what you do, right?
Right.
And I mean, we all have those people who are the naysayers, and for some of us, it lights our fire. I remember somebody telling me my company would never succeed, and I was just like, I'll prove you wrong. And it kind of lights that fire in your gut where you're like, okay, hell or high water, I'm doing whatever it takes. And I love that, through hell, you discovered that we have the power within us. And if you haven't tried this, there's so many things that we can try. There's always hope. Yeah, always. And that's why I start with that free mind body blueprint. Okay. It's a really good simplification of where do I start. I have got a podcast, Body Freedom Radio. I start just teaching you about how the brain works. On my website, ashleighdilello.com, I have a free training teaching you about the brain. It's like 45 minutes where I promise you will understand, and at a simple level. I'm not trying to make you a neuroscientist, right? And then from there, if you're ready and you want to do the deeper work, you can schedule a free consult call with me, because that allows me to better understand you, to help you get to the root. And then absolutely, if I feel like I can help you, let's get you free, because and you get you free. And that's what I love, is that we're also feel so reliant upon other people, right? Whether it's your therapist or your doctor, or I had over 200 injections, and I felt very dependent upon my doctor when I needed, my nerves, were firing, and it was like, well, I can't do that the rest of my life. Plus, it just
so incredibly expensive, but also traumatic for the body to constantly be going in there with needles. But you feel this reliance on outside of you and a powerlessness inside of you. And bioemotional healing really teaches you not just how powerful you are, but how to harness it.
Yeah.
And not just to get free now, but to truly change your system so it doesn't default back to it. And so that's why that consult call is there, to see if, we're a right fit, and if I can help you, gosh, let's just get you free, because the world more than ever needs people living free, not stuck, living in their power and their light and their purpose. And we just got to remove the blocks that are holding you there. And I'm continually amazed, but not amazed at what's possible. And it is possible for you too, because I can tell you, every one of my clients had been through it, and they'd done just about everything, and had, again, that belief of like, can I really do this, right? Because it's incredibly vulnerable. The thing you want most is the thing you feel most vulnerable in. So it does take that leap, but it's science, and that this is possible.
And that's why we wanted to share this with you, with the mental health helps and the suicide prevention. Is there's a lot of alternatives, and there's new information, and maybe there's things that you've tried or haven't tried. And we want to provide all the options. So when you're going through it and you're saying, this didn't work, here's maybe something new that you can try for yourself and see, does it work? You get to a point and you say, well, what do I have to lose?
Right.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you about with bioemotional healing that you wanted to bring up before we wrap?
Well, just what makes it so different, because obviously we understand talk therapy or coaching, but what makes it so different is it's rooted in the brain and nervous system, right? And everything that we do in the subconscious mind is piece by piece, and it's the process. It's, again, when I was trying to figure this out, I realized, because nobody had a step-by-step process. And if you try to do step 6 before 1 through 5, your brain and nervous system will not be ready. So this isn't just about getting yourself to consciously understand or do something. It's about getting your system to actually be accepting and ready to let go of the stress response it has, because then you can rewire what you want. You can't just go in and rewire. You have to get your system to a place of where it actually really accepts it can do something different and not trigger that same response. And that is why you can do it, because I promise you haven't done it. You haven't, because a process, step by step, in a way that you truly harness that power that, again, we each were given. And so I want you to know it's absolutely possible. But again, people feel exhausted. They're overwhelmed, and you do get to a point of like, I don't have much left. I mean, I felt like clawing
what else
my fingertips,
why am I even gonna
right?
bother?
You're exhausted with even trying, like not just fighting what you're going through, but also trying, and then it
I don't want to learn something new. I don't want another assignment. I just want to lay here peacefully in pain and die.
Right. But that's where I'm telling you too, you're not doing it alone. And you have a process that step by step will walk you through. And like I said, you're doing a lot of efforts every day to survive.
So what is next for you? What are your future goals?
My future goals: expand the podcast. I'm writing a book.
Nice.
That's a huge goal of mine, to get just that information into people's hands.
On the bioemotional healing?
On bioemotional healing. And just expand the podcast and my book, and then continue to just free more people so they can then go and live their life and
leave a legacy.
That's right. And give other people permission to do the same, because that's what we all need. We all see the world as we are, not as it is. And why people put such limitations on us is because they have limitations on themselves.
Perception is reality. Our perception is our reality. So
the more I'm able to help people get free and go live their life, it just, that effect, even on families in and of itself, has just been so amazing. And to start even breaking, that family idea or generational idea of like, this is who we are, and we all have this, and we're all just stuck, and this is how we do things. It's so impactful. So the book and everything that will expand from that, the podcast, and then just free as many people as I can.
I love it. Her energy feels so good. Ashleigh Di Lello with the bioemotional healing. Thank you for being here. Can't wait to read the book.
It's
the end of the
coming.
year,
This
year,
is the goal. This
right?
year.
We're putting it out there.
We
It's
are.
going to happen.
This year, it's going to happen.
Keep your eyes open and keep your mind open for alternate options when it comes to your health and your healing. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Mental Health Helps. If you're an expert or you have a story you would like to share, please reach out to us at gooddeedrevolution.org.